Hello everyone and welcome to Newegg TV. My name is Paul. Today I'm going to be taking a closer look at this motherboard from Gigabyte. This is the Gigabyte X79S-UP5-WIFI. Let's start off with a closer look at the retail box, and also let's talk a little bit about this board's positioning, because based on the feature set and the amount of hardware that Gigabyte has integrated, this kind of sits at a unique position between an enthusiast board and a workstation board. To that end, we'll start off by talking about Gigabyte's naming scheme for their motherboards, if you're not familiar with it. Well, the 5 on the end is usually indicated of the number in the series, and usually that will range between 3 and 7. So 5 is more towards the high end with this particular motherboard. And this is usually the chipset, and this is X79S. The S is for server, and the X79 is there to tell you that it works with Intel Sli Bridge processors that are usually on X79 if you're going with a your typical at-home user. However, this actually includes the Intel C606 chipset, which is Intel's server chipset. So it doesn't actually have the X79. Still will support Sli Bridge processors, but by way of C606, you get support for Xeon processors, like this one right here, so the E-Series Socket 2011 Xeons. Of course, it will also support Sli Bridge E, so you can still go with like a 3930K or a 3960X, of course. And the C606 also gives some extra features, such as a bit of increased bandwidth, and you also get a huge amount of SAS ports on the board. So I'll show you guys those once we get a little bit closer in. But apart from the S, this being a server board, we also have UP. If you're familiar with the UD series from Gigabyte, that's ultra durable, such as the logo that we have up here, meaning it runs cool and efficient, and it has ultra performance. And they've done a lot with the design of the board to make sure it's very durable and it will last a very long time, and that they've gone with high-end components for all of the power delivery and whatnot. The P is standing for power. At least from everything I've read, it stands for power. I haven't confirmed that directly with Gigabyte, but 3D power, the internal rectifier, IR, I believe 3550, yeah, the IR 3550 power stage ICs that they've included, which can run up to 60 degrees Celsius cooler than your typical power delivery components. So by way of that, they're allowing you to provide more power, allowing them to run cooler, give better overclocking, etc. You also have the 3D BIOS, so when you're looking at the BIOS, you actually get a 3D representation. It's a dual UEFI, which means you can switch back and forth between two of them, so you have a backup in case your update fails, or you can set up a couple different settings on either one, switch between them. Again, by way of that C606 chipset, if you're using a Xeon processor, you can do ECC memory, so that is another option for you. So if you're going the workstation or even server route with this particular board, you can drop in some ECC memory. Again, also C606 gives you 8 SAS ports that are also on board. We talked about Wi-Fi, or at least I said it when I said the title of the this motherboard. So you'll get an 300 megabits per second dual band Wi-Fi plus Bluetooth 4.0 card. There's some more UD stuff, so they're using twice the copper in the PCB. They have a glass fabric to provide humidity protection. They got an award at Computex, so right up here we have the Best of Computex 2012 from Tom's Hardware. A little bit more information on those Power Stage IR3550 ICs. This is designed for overclocked Intel CPUs and for use in water-cooled systems. So that's one of the benefits of that. Since these run cooler, if you're going to be using a closed-loop water cooler that are quite popular these days, or if you're going to be setting up a custom water cooling loop, you don't get quite as much airflow in the system. So since the power delivery components run cooler, they can still perform well without having that necessary extra air running over them that you might get with, for example, an air-based cooler. And then finally, 5-year warranty from Gigabyte, so they're definitely standing behind this motherboard. We have some more details on some of the stuff I've already talked about here on the back, so you guys can take a closer look if you want. I like to read this stuff about the power stage. The IR3550 power stage are more power efficient and operate cooler than competing MOSFETs, resulting in longer component lifespan, more headroom for greater overclocking performance. Nicely put. Some other stuff down here, and then finally on the bottom left we have the more detailed specifications for the board, so if you guys want to take a closer look, you can. I'm going to go ahead and take a look inside the box. Taking a look inside the box, we have the motherboard. Going to come back and finish on that one. Apart from that, we also have a wireless card. I already kind of mentioned this. So this is your 300 megabits per second dual band wireless end card. It's a little PCI Express X1, so you can drop them into any of the PCI Express slots on the motherboard. It's also got Bluetooth 4.0, some LED lights on the back. You got your two antenna right there, so you can connect those to these two connection points, and then you can string them up and place them wherever gives you the best signal. You also get a Gigabyte case badge. If you're into case badges, we have some bridges right here. This motherboard can do 3-way Crossfire X or SLI. They've included a Crossfire X bridge as well as a SLI bridge. They're both flexible, so you can extend them to give you a few options when you're actually installing your video cards and getting them set up and organized how you want them. Oh, one more. You also get a rigid PCB style SLI bridge. That's for 3-way SLI. It's stiff, so that provides a little bit of extra support for the video cards. And that will give you your 3-way configuration option. You get a front panel USB 3.0 bay, so a little 3.5-inch bay right there. Gives you a couple USB 3.0 ports, so if your case doesn't already have them, or if you want to add more, you have a 20-pin connector right there to plug into the motherboard for USB 3.0 support. You also have, what else do we have? We have some serial ATA connectors, of course, cables. Total of 6 of these. They're all black. They all have clasps. They're all going to be SATA revision 1, 2, or 3 compatible, so that's up to 6 gigabits per second. It looks like 3 of them have 90-degree brackets on one of the plugs. The other 3 have straight plugs on both ends, so a nice selection there. Here's some documentation. Let me do the last couple items in here before we get to that. This is a USB connector, and I can only guess that this is actually for, yeah. Alright, so this is actually going to be for your Wi-Fi card. So you're going to, a little USB header right there to connect to one of the headers on the board. And then you also have, of course, an input-output shield. It is black. You have some color coding on there to tell you which ports are which. Here's your multilingual installation guidebook. Here is your, oh, which one's this? Set your desktop free. This is the user's manual just for that wireless card. Here I can actually confirm if I was right about that extra little cable. Yes, I was right. See? USB cable. Okay, so that's for setting up your wireless card. Then finally, you have your main motherboard manual there for both the UP5 and the UP5-WIFI version, because it's also sold without the Wi-Fi card. And I like Gigabyte's manuals because they provide you topical layout of the board. They provide you a block diagram, which I really like, so you can tell what's connected to what. Detailed specs on all of the included components, and all that other good stuff in there. So keep that handy while you're doing your build. And then finally, we have a separate disk here for your Wi-Fi Bluetooth card, so you can install drivers for that. And then also you have your utility and driver disk for the board, and chances are there's updated versions of all of this software available from the Gigabyte website, so check there first before you go ahead and load off of the disk. So here's a look at the X79S-UP5-WIFI itself. As you can see, color scheme primarily black. It's got a matte black PCB in the back there. You have some gray connectors here and the DIMM slots, as well as some of your SAS ports down there. And then your heat sinks are sort of a dark gray, almost black, as well as blue, so you get some blue highlights. And as you can see, they've done a lot of work with the heat sinks on this board to make sure that your components stay nice and cool. So you have your primary heat sink right down there for your C606 chipset, and then you also have a supplemental heat sink right back here, and then another one up top, and those are going to be providing some extra heat dissipation for your power delivery. There are also 2 heat pipes, one which extends right down this way, and one which extends right down that way, and those are going to help to balance the heat between your heat sinks and basically push heat to where it's needed to be dissipated the most. That being said, let's also, oh wait, I wanted to flip it around to the back really quick, because I like to do that. So here's a look at the back, so kind of a better look at that matte black PCB. Of course, you also have Phillips head screws over here, as well as down in the lower left, and those are keeping those heat sinks mounted. You also have a cross beam right here for the heat sink that's right above your power delivery for the CPU, also mounted with Phillips head screws, so you can remove those if it becomes necessary in the future. This is an eATX motherboard, so it's a bit wider on this side than your typical ATX motherboard, so double check with your case that you're going to be going with to make sure that it will fit within there. Finally, before we go into detail, I wanted to talk about the fan headers. So you got a CPU fan header right there in the middle, right below the CPU. You also have a system fan header, 4-pin, up here in the upper left. Another system fan header, 4-pin, right here next to the 24-pin power connector. Then 2 more 3-pin system fan headers, one down here just below the PCI slot, and one in the lower right, which is also where we're going to be taking a closer look at right now. So you should be able to get all your system fans connected to the motherboard, at least most of them, depending on the airflow situation in your case. Which is often very helpful because then you can control their RPMs and whatnot within the BIOS, or UEFI I should say. Finally, we have a reset switch. So that's a surface mounted reset switch, very helpful if you're doing an outside of the box build to help you reset. You also have a power switch in the upper right, which we'll get to in a little bit. There are your two dual UEFI chips. Those are configurable, or at least switchable via a button actually on the I/O on the back of the motherboard. We'll also be coming to that. There's your front panel connectors. They're all color-coded. You've got a little chart listed there underneath them so you can tell which is which. You also have a clear CMOS jumper right above that. If you don't want to use that jumper, you've also got a little button on the back of the motherboard that you can push on the I/O. So again, I'll be showing you that in just a moment. Here's your USB front panel connector. The red background one there is always on as long as you have a power supply connected and turned on. So that's a smart one to route to your front panel connectors because you can use it for charging devices even while the computer is off. It also provides extra voltage to charge your devices more quickly. A couple more USB 2.0 connectors right there. Those are pretty standard. You also have a TPM header right there, and particularly if you're going to be using this in a workstation environment, that TPM header becomes more useful. Don't see it used very frequently with at-home builds, but again, a workstation type environment, that could be something that's desirable. There's the system fan header that I already mentioned. You got a 1394 header right there, that's for FireWire. SPDIF connector for an SPDIF audio connection. There's your front panel audio connector, so you can route that for front panel microphone and headphone. Speaking of your audio, these are your main audio components right there. You'll notice a little Realtek chip. You get a Realtek ALC898 codec. It's 7.1 channel audio. And next up, we're going to talk about the PCI Express area. I should say PCI and PCI Express. You do have a legacy PCI slot down here at the bottom. You also have a PCI Express X1 slot, and those actually both routed over to the C606 chipset. The rest of your slots here are all going to be connecting directly to the PCI Express controller in your Sli Bridge E or Xeon processor. You have an X16 slot up here at the top, physically X16 as well as wired for that. You also have an X8 slot right here, an X4 slot, and then another X16 slot. So they're sort of making this setup to be configured for dual GPU, possibly 3 GPU solutions. If you're going to go with 3, you'll be running at X16, X8, and X16. You also get the X4 slot in there, so you can do another add-on card, for example. So if you're going to be adding an audio card, anything like that, you can also drop that in. So pretty nice variation on the PCI Express slots, so you can get different configurations up and running. Particularly if you're going to be going with a workstation setup, you could, for example, set up like a Quadro card here and also connect maybe some Tesla cards. So a lot of different configuration options. That being said, let's move on over to the right for a closer look at the heatsink on top of our C606 chipset. You can see the Gigabyte logo right there. It is blue and gray. I can turn it to the side so you guys can see a bit of the protrusions right there to help dissipate the heat. And the C606 chipset under there, as mentioned, is a server-grade chipset. It's also compatible, as I've already mentioned a few times, with your standard Sli Bridge E Core i7 processors. So if you're going to go with one of those, for example, do much better with overclocking, whereas the Xeons tend to veer more towards stability. So again, depending on your needs, you could go either way. Let's talk about serial ATA because, as you'll notice, you have a ton of ports right here. Actually, the 8 here on the left side are SAS ports. Those are all controlled by the C606 chipset. Actually, all of these ports are. Now, the 8 SAS ports are going to be compatible with RAID 0, RAID 1, and RAID 10. They're also compatible with serial ATA, so if you have a SAS or a SATA drive, you can connect either one of those. Although, if you are going to be doing a RAID configuration, I would recommend sticking with either just SAS or just SATA. If you're talking SATA connection or just general throughput, they're SATA revision 2 or 3 gigabits per second capable. Over on the right side here, you have your native serial ATA connectors. The 2 here on the far right are your SATA revision 3 6 gigabit per second ports. So if you have an SSD, I definitely recommend connecting it to those right there. You also have 4 more SATA Revision 2 SATA Revision 2 3 gigabit per second ports, and then these are compatible. These support RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, and RAID 10. Moving up the side of the board, we have some more connection points. Let me make sure this is propped up properly, of course. So right here we have a USB 3.0 header, and you can use that with that included USB 3.0 bracket that I showed you guys. Above that you have a main 24-pin motherboard power connector. There's that system fan header that I already talked about at the beginning. Then all the way up here on the top right you have a surface-mounted power button. It's red. It stands out quite nicely. So again, particularly for outside of the box builds, that's very handy to have. Next up, let's talk about the CPU as well as the memory, CPU socket I should say. So socket 2011, Sli Bridge E Core i7 processors or Xeon E-series processors, all supported. They're going to give you very different compatibility. One thing they are going to give you is Pci Express Gen 3 support. So you do have connection via the Pci Express controller in the chipset, so you can run Gen 3 Pci Express cards. Of course, also backwards compatible Gen 2. You have a universal mounting socket right there. And as I have found that socket 2011 motherboards tend to veer a bit more towards the enthusiast segment of the market, very popular to be installing a closed loop or a custom CPU loop for cooling on this. So actually water cooling or liquid cooling is very popular. That's one of the reasons why Gigabyte has designed this with those international rectifier IR 3550 ICs that are on the board, which are actually up in the power delivery up there, because since they run cooler, they don't require quite as much airflow over them. So if you have an air cooler, for example, that's going to be pushing a lot of air around. But if you're going to go with a water cooler, that's going to tend to run a bit more silently, generally speaking, but it's also going to be moving the airflow from a fan that's directly on top of the CPU to, for example, fans that might be mounted to radiators at the top or at the back of your case. That being said, you're not going to get as much airflow over that. But those ICs that they have used, since they run so much cooler, you're still going to be able to maintain good temperatures, which is very key for maintaining stability as well as overclocking. Now, apart from the CPU socket and the universal mounting bracket right there, of course you have quad channel memory support, and you have 8 DIMM slots available on this motherboard. So you're going to be wanting to go with DDR3 memory. Of course, you can go with ECC memory only if you're using a Xeon processor. Otherwise, if you're going to go with the Sli Bridge Core i7 processor, I would definitely recommend going with non-ECC because the memory controller doesn't support ECC. Apart from that, you want to go with 1.5 volt DIMMs. You can also get up to 8 gigabytes per DIMM, so that gives you a total memory capacity of up to 64 gigabytes, which again is really handy if you're going for a higher-end system, if you're going to be doing video editing or rendering or workstation type activities. It supports overclock speeds up to 2133, supports Intel's XMP memory profiles, so you can plug those in to get your memory up and running at the proper speeds. And that about covers it for the CPU and the memory. Finally, we have a 8-pin supplemental CPU power connector right there up at the top, and then we will close out with our inputs and outputs, which are here on the side of the board, and these will be exposed on your computer, or at the back of your computer when you have it installed, of course. So first off, you have a PS2 port over here. That's a combo port for a mouse or a keyboard. You have USB 2.0, that's 2 right there, 2 more right there, so 4 USB 2.0, another USB 2.0 via that red port right there. You have a combo eSATA/USB port right there, so that's powered eSATA. You also have another eSATA port right there. You also have this little button, and in case you're wondering what that is, that's for your dual BIOS. So you'll have either the green or the blue, and by pushing the button it will light up either one so you can tell which BIOS you're on. You have an OC button. You can use that particularly again with the Sli Bridge E Core i7 processors. You can use that for a default or sort of an automatic overclock that the motherboard will set up for you. You also have a FireWire port on the back. You have 4 more USB 3.0 ports. Next up, you have dual Gigabit Ethernet, so you have both an Intel as well as a Realtek Gigabit Ethernet connection right there, so both of those available to you. Finally, you have an optical Toslink connector right there for your audio, as well as your analog audio outs for your Realtek 7.1 channel audio. And that's going to wrap it up for this video, guys. Once again, this has been the Gigabyte X79S-UP5-WIFI motherboard featuring the C606 chipset and support for both Intel Sli Bridge E Core i7 Enthusiast series as well as Xeon E-series socket 2011 processors. I'm Paul with Newegg TV. If you enjoyed today's video, you can find more on our Newegg YouTube channel. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time.